All right, so we will go ahead and get started. As you know, today we're talking about Cusco and the Sacred Valley. I'm Ashley. I'm the founder of Traverse Journeys, and we host meetup groups across the US and Canada. And Traverse we'll talk about in a minute, but we do small group trips around the world. And then we also have Abel with us. He's our local guide in Cusco. Abel, you want to say hi?
Hi, hello everyone.
Hi, Abel.
Yay! So, just to give you a little bit of background, so like I said, Traverse Journeys, we do small group trips in about 25 countries across the globe, and our tagline is People, Planet, Purpose. So we really try to infuse people-to-people experiences, responsible travel, and purpose. So here's some notes about sound not being so good. Sometimes it happens a little bit. So today we're going to be talking about the Sacred Valley. So Abel, do you want to go ahead and start telling us a little bit about Peru?
Sure. Well, one more time, welcome to this meeting. Please let me know if you can hear me very well. Or, well, basically, I would like to know if you hear anything about Peru before. In this map, I basically want you to show some basic stuff about the Peruvian country. So if you look at in the map, in the green line, that is Peru. And all the countries around, we have Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. And the green circle next to the coast is Lima. So most of our travelers, they arrive to Peru by plane to Lima. And the other circle, it's Cusco in the lower part of the map. So people need to fly most of the time from Lima to Cusco. It takes like 1 hour by plane. The other thing, as you see in the map, 60% of the national territory of Peru, it's Amazon. It's the reason why Peru is a very diverse country in terms of flora, fauna, ecosystems, and weathers, and products, different kind of natural products. So it's one of the reasons why people like to come to Peru and visit it and experience all these things, because we have a lot to show and a lot of things to share. And as you see, there's like a natural border between the brown spot and the green spot. So just on between, in the middle, we have the mountain range of the Andes. So the Andes, they are extended from Colombia in the north, as you see in the map, to the south as part of Chile and Argentina. And Cusco, as you see, is just, because of the circle you will see, is just in the middle between the high Andes and the Amazon. So Cusco, it's located above 11,150 feet, or 3,300 meters above sea level. And the other thing is, as you know, Peru is very famous because of Machu Picchu, but Machu Picchu is not at the same elevation than Cusco. Cusco is higher than Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu city, it's in the cloud forest. It's very close to the jungle. So it's lower. It's located about 7,000 feet. So the other thing is we have different traditions, a lot of cultures, and Peru is very popular also in terms of history because of the Inca civilization. But you have to know that when we talk about Peru culture, we will not talk just about the Inca civilization. We're going to talk about many other cultures developed in the same area. So we have more than 4,500 years of history, culture, technology, etc. One of the reasons why Peru it's very important in terms of traditions and knowledge is because of the language. As you see on the slide, the last word says Quechua. Well, Quechua, it's the name of the tongue that people used to speak in Quechua times, in Inca times. Right now in South America, there are 8 million of Quechua speakers from Colombia to Argentina and Chile. So not only Peru is part of the territory of the Incas, also these other countries. So in total, 6 countries, they still speaking Quechua in all South America, which is great because Quechua is not just a simple language. It's another way to understand the world, the culture, the natural elements, etc. So that's something really nice to experience in Peru, and especially in Cusco, that was the capital of the Inca civilization.
So when we're talking about Peru, can everyone hear me okay? Maybe just a quick thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you, Ashley.
Perfect, thank you. So when we're talking about Peru, a couple of the cultural values that we often talk about, one is collectivist culture, and that's thinking in terms of we rather than me. So you'll notice that people are very sociable and conversational, very strong oral traditions and family orientation. And it's what we would call a feminine society. So the primary motivation is, in a feminine society, it's about caring for others and quality of life.
Okay, no, don't worry. Well, because of the actual context, you know, we are having problems related with this virus in the entire planet, and Peru is not the exception. I was talking with Ashley, and just yesterday, the president said that there are around 100,000 infected people in the whole country, but most of them are in the north of Peru because the population in that part it's well, there's more inhabitants in the north of Peru more than in the Andes. So the quarantine was extended until June 30. And in Cusco right now we have 600 infected people. And the other side, this is affecting every single one in Cusco because most of the jobs are related with tourism. So around 60% of the population in Cusco, they work direct or indirect way in tourism. And most of us, we have to stop because the borders still closed. All the archaeological sites still closed. So yeah, a lot of people in Cusco City are suffering the effects of this quarantine that is getting extended for longer. But we are hoping that this situation can stop in the next weeks. So yeah, most of us, we have to, as you probably, we have to stay at home, but people is getting tired of this situation because even when the government is trying to support like some families, giving some money, this effort is not enough. So something interesting about some research is, by any reason, this virus does not affect to people who lives above 11,000 feet. We don't really know why, but the number of infected people in Cusco is lower compared with people in the coast side, which is good, but we don't really know about that. We don't know the reason. So yes, the problem is money, the problem is work, and the time. Some people are saying that the situation is going to be extended until December at least, probably more, but we don't know yet. It's unknown.
Okay, thank you, Abel. I'm gonna try talking again. Just keep me posted on how you can hear me. So when we do our trip, which we have 2021, our itinerary is designed to really take you on a journey. So we start together. Abel, can you go ahead and talk?
Sure.
I don't think I can hear you well.
Okay. Well, the first thing is because of the distance. You know, in Cusco there are a lot of archaeological sites, and we try to be focused in the most important places. So as you see in the map, oh, give me a second, please. Okay. From Cusco, we go to Pisac, which is like 1 hour away, and we go there by car. So then we go to Ollantaytambo, which is another Inca city. And the reason why these two places are so important in our circuit is because they still preserving local customs related with Andean traditions, with costumes, and the living culture. In this case, some of these people still working in the way that the Inca people used to work 500 years ago. And that's something really nice to see. And well, it's part of the experience when we can see not only an archaeological site which is empty, when you can complement, when you can mix this first impression with living culture, it's something really nice to observe. So as a part of the experiences, we're going to talk about the guest houses. You have to know that some people like to walk the Cusco region. It's very famous because we have the Inca trail to get to Machu Picchu. But for people who don't want to get to Machu Picchu by foot, we have the option, which is the non-hiking, so you can get there by train. So both options are available for you. And the Sacred Valley, it's really nice. It's a really nice destination because weather, temperature, the landscape, it's stunning. And we're gonna spend some time there. Then, as you see, Pachamanca cookout, it's a traditional way how people used to cook. So in the Andes, this tradition has more than 4,000 years. People used to make a hole on the earth and they used to make fire and then put the ingredients and then just wait for like 2 hours. And after that time, food is ready. in a symbolic way, in the Andes, we believe in Mother Earth. So it's even better when your food comes from the earth. So that's something very, very interesting to watch and learn. And in terms of Machu Picchu visit, well, as I mentioned, you can go by train. It takes like from Ollantaytambo, which is the closest train station. We take the train to Machu Picchu. It takes like 1 hour, 40 minutes. And Machu Picchu is in the, as I mentioned before, it's in the cloud forest. So there's more humidity, lower altitude, more vegetation. So it's another scenery, very, very different to the Sacred Valley or Cusco City. So you can get there by train or by foot doing the Inca Trail hike. And as you see, we like to go to this place. We like to make these visits in small groups, because otherwise the experience is not the same. And this is in Cusco City. As you see, this is the kind of accommodations we provide. All these places used to be colonial houses. So this is in the downtown. So you will see the influence of the Spanish architecture in most of these hotels. And it's very nice because there's a lot of green, a lot of vegetation, and it's very quiet in some areas more than others, but in the place where you're going to stay, it's very quiet, and that's really good to get a good rest. The next one, please. And this is a nice view of Cusco City. As you know, Cusco is like an open museum. You know, on the streets you will see a beautiful mix between colonial architecture and Inca architecture, both together. So when you walk through the streets, you're gonna have different impressions about these two different times, you know, the Inca times and the colonial time after the Spanish conquest. So along the way, you will be hearing different stories related with our traditions, our culture, our costumes. This picture belongs to San Pedro Market. This market is in the downtown. A lot of visitors, they love to visit this place because it's unique. You can have a really good idea about the local costumes, local traditions on this place. You can see what people eat, what people drink, what kind of things they buy, and you will see a bunch of products for cooking, like different types of potatoes, corn, quinoa, etc. So it's something really nice to see. And some other, this is a show of this mix between Inca architecture and the colonial architecture. So you have to know that after the Spanish conquest, most of the archaeological sites or Inca temples were destroyed intentionally by the conquistadors. And they decide to build Catholic churches over these Inca temples. And some of them, they show a part of the original design. So in this picture, you will see, for example, in the lower part, you have the Inca walls, and in the upper part, the colonial temples or churches. So we will see a lot of that in Cusco. And it's really interesting because you have a better idea about what really happened in South America after the conquest, you know. Next. Ashley, can you, well, you can hear us, of course. Would you like to share a little bit about the Inca Trail?
I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, how's the audio quality? Is it any better?
For now, yes.
Okay, so just let me know if it's not. Oh, good, yay. So as we mentioned, so you have an option of hiking the Inca Trail. Everyone starts together in Cusco, so we get to tour together. Abel is guiding us through the city to experience that. And then the hikers go off on the Inca Trail, so it's 3 nights and 4 days. And then the non-hiking option is in the Sacred Valley. So if you choose to do the hike, here are some kind of images of what it looks like. There's quite a variety of terrain as you get to the peak, and you sleep in camp, like in tents every night, and there's porters, and you have really hearty, really delicious food. And we actually have a whole nother webinar that we did just on the hike. So when I email everyone after this, I'll include that. But the hike is a really incredible experience. It's 45 kilometers. You do carry your packs. You can also have a porter for help. The question coming from Pierre about lengths, the Inca Trail is a set length. So it's 45 kilometers. You do a certain amount every day. So you can't just do kind of part or it's all or none, like you do the actual Inca Trail route or not. However, that said, there are other hikes. Like if you do the non-hiking version of our itinerary, you can choose to do other hikes in the Sacred Valley, like day hikes. So that's an option if you don't want to do that. The packs, I mean, these are our own backpacks, so they're really as heavy as your belongings are. So it could be maybe like up to 20 pounds, 15, 20 pounds. It kind of just depends on your own size and what you're packing. If you have trouble, like I know it was definitely hard on my back, you can pay extra for a porter, and that's really helpful. The question about the Inca Trail opening, we don't know right now. The question from Susan, so for half porter, it's $195. And from Pierre, there are other hike options that are like 3 or 5 day, but we just offer the 4-day Inca Trail hike. So there are other hikes in the region, absolutely. So the question about from Susan, I mean, it's going to vary by operator, but for us, you can get a porter for an extra US dollar amount, yes. And speaking of porters, that's something that we really pay attention to, because that is something in the industry where we want porters to be paid fairly and well. They're doing really heavy lifting, literally work. And so we have a whole model of responsible travel around that. So if you have any questions, I can send more information about that. But the Inca Trail is a really incredible journey getting to Machu Picchu. You see all this amazing terrain. Like Abel said earlier, it's in the cloud forest as you're approaching Machu Picchu. And then the day that we approach Machu Picchu, everyone meets up together. So those of you that aren't on the hike, we go through the Sacred Valley. And so we cross over from Cusco into Ollantaytambo, and that's where we base out of. And so Abel's going to tell us just a little bit about some of the sites that we visit. Abel, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. So, well, as I said, there are a lot of archaeological sites on the Sacred Valley, Cusco City, and even close to Machu Picchu. But not all of them are visited, and some others are more visited than others. This one, Ollantaytambo, is probably the most visited archaeological site because it's next to the train station. So around 70% of visitors, they stop here at least for taking the train toward Machu Picchu. And on the way, some people decide to stay at least one night. They spend one night. There are a lot of hostels and hotels and lodges on the area. So it's a really good option. Sometimes we stay here in this hotel, which is called El Albergue. And you have to know something about the Inca civilization, and this is really nice. When you hear about the Inca trails, most of people understand that there is just one trail who connects Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu, and that is not true. There are thousands of kilometers of trails in part of South America, from Colombia to Argentina. So why is this trail so important? Because this one is connecting to Machu Picchu, which is the highlight of Peru. but there are so many options. In the past, people used to walk from one city to another using these paths. And it's not a single path. There used to be, I'm gonna say, like, there used to be resting places and storehouses and local villages on the way. So it used to be a very nice trip in the past. And now we just walk just a piece, in this case, from Ollantaytambo to Machu Picchu, but there are many, many options. So Ollantaytambo is one more city before to get to Machu Picchu, but there are no other places. From Ollantaytambo, in this case, we will go to the other side in the opposite way, and we will visit the salt flats of Maras. This place, it's very famous because it's, as you see, in the middle of two mountains, and people harvest pink salt. I don't know if you hear, there are a few places in the world where you can get pink salt. And this is a pre-Inca site. It means it has more than 1,000 of years. So people get the salt because of the evaporation. And well, thing number one, water comes saltier from the mountain. So they fill every one of these ponds, water evaporates, and they export the salt to different countries. It's very valuable in gourmet restaurants. So we're going to stop here. We'll see all the procedure. This place belongs to the local community. So they're still working on the way that Inca people used to harvest the salt. And that's something really nice to see. Then we'll go to Moray. Moray is another archaeological site. In this case, this is not a city, it's a laboratory. So people used to experiment with altitude. They used to acclimatize different seeds to different conditions. If you remember in the map, the first map I show you of Peru, we have different elevations from 22,000 feet, which is the highest peak in Peruvian territory, to the cloud forest and the coast, which is 0 meters above sea level. So as you see, we have a lot of difference in terms of elevation. So using this kind of technology, people try to acclimatize different seeds to different conditions and then try to spread all the seeds to the entire country. So this is something really nice to see and to experience as well. This picture belongs to, sorry, the Pisac. To one more slide. Thank you. This is another Inca city. In this case, one of the highlights of this place is the cemetery. It's on the cliff. It's hard to imagine how the people used to bury the bodies in the middle of the cliff, you know? And it's the largest cemetery in Cusco region, still preserved. So that's something remarkable in this area. Then next one, please. Then we got Machu Picchu. So as you know, most of people have heard about Cusco because of this marvel. So pictures, they never make justice with the real view of this site. And it's surrounded by mountains. It's on the top of the mountain, and we have a lot of terraces around. So it's really amazing. It's probably the best proof that human being and nature can live in harmony. So all the people who goes to Machu Picchu, at the end, they have a good lesson about this place. So it's one of the reasons why it's so impressive. But there's one thing. When we go, in this case, by train from Ollantaytambo to Machu Picchu, we'll get to Aguascalientes. Aguascalientes is the name of this little town. It's a walking distance place. There's no taxis, there's no buses. So you can get everywhere just by foot, you know. And there's a lot of restaurants, hotels, souvenir stores. So it's just for tourists. A lot of people spend at least one night there, and the day after they go to Machu Picchu, but some people go to Machu Picchu just in one day, you know, and they don't need to spend a night in Aguascalientes. And the other thing is everything it's a little bit more expensive compared with Cusco City or Ollantaytambo or etc. because every single thing gets to Aguascalientes by train. That's why they charge an extra fee, because it's really hard to bring logistics to this little town, and it's very touristy.
Yeah, so we don't spend a lot of time in Aguascalientes on the tour. You just have a few hours in the afternoon after Machu Picchu before we head back to Ollantaytambo. So after we visit Machu Picchu and the group is all back together, so the hikers and the non-hikers are together, we visit our community partner. So for Traverse, every location, every destination that we go to, we have a nonprofit community partner, and 3% of sales of what you paid goes to that organization. And our community partner in Peru is called Cusco, and they're an alternative school for local kids in the community. And the donation goes to a scholarship program to support them. And one of their focuses is within education is Quechua language preservation and society. So they have all of the normal education merits to meet standards, but they also weave that into like, let's say, gardening and a science project, for example, and language skills. And it's a really incredible value in the community. Abel, do you want to talk a little bit? You mentioned before how Quechua is spoken, and the Quechua language and society is so important in the Andean region. Can you just talk about that a little bit more for us?
Sure. So the official language in Peru is right now Spanish, but before the Spanish conquest used to be the Quechua. So after the conquest, it was prohibited speaking in Quechua, but in the last 4 years, it's gaining more relevance. So now, as a part of the educational programs on the schools, children, they must learn at least like a basic Quechua. So why is this language so important? Because we don't talk about ourselves when we speak of it. We are thinking in the other person. So in Quechua, sorry, are there any questions?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. So for example, in Quechua language, we never say goodbye. There is no word to say goodbye, or we don't say hello. We always ask to the other person, how are you doing? And the answer is like, I'm good, or I'm not so good, and how are you again? So it's a very, very personalized language. And there's a lot of information on it. So that's why the Peruvian government is promoting this language again, and they start in the schools. So on the trip, there are going to be several chances where we're going to talk a lot about the names, because most of the names of these places are in Quechua. We're going to learn the meaning and why these places were called in that way. So it's at the end of the trip, you're going to have another idea about how the Andean worldview is. It's hard to compare it using other languages like English or Spanish. Sometimes there's no translation for some expressions, but it's very rich in terms of content and information. And it's one of the reasons why we like to talk and sharing about this tongue, about this language. It has more than 4,000 years. Some people think that just the Inca people used to speak Quechua, but that's not true. Some other cultures before of them, they start using this language.
Yeah, thank you, Abel. So we mentioned earlier that one of the Quechua traditions that you'll get to experience is the Pachamanca. And it's just a beautiful afternoon. We eat together and the food is cooked underground. And so it's a really old tradition, and it's essentially pressure cooked and steamed at the same time because they use hot rocks, yet it only takes 20 or 30 minutes to actually do the cooking. So it's a really cool process. You can see the picture on the left. There's meat and vegetables in there, and then they cover them with local herbs. So it infuses it with a really amazing flavor. And then it's covered up with rocks. And so we enjoy that together. And then on the same property, so this is in Ollantaytambo where we stay, they also have a distillery and a coffee roaster. So it's really cool. You can walk around and you can see how they're doing that. They use local botanicals with the distillery. They do a really amazing job of roasting with the coffee, and that's actually the coffee that you'll drink at your bed and breakfast each morning as well. So it's a really fun afternoon, and it's a great reward after the hike and after seeing the Sacred Valley. And then on that note, we'll talk a little bit about food in Peru. Peru is known as actually the best cuisine of South America. It's really renowned. There's actually Michelin star restaurants in Lima. And you can see on this slide some of the very traditional foods. In the last 10, 15 years, everyone knows quinoa, and it's a healthy, non-grain, high-protein food. And it comes from this region. It comes from the Andes. In fact, you'll see it. Marco, yes, you're right. That is guinea pig, which is called cuy. And actually, I believe that's a Quechua word. On the picture up top, the picture up top is quinoa soup, which is a really hearty, great food for being up in the Andes Mountains. Pierre is asking, cuy, we do have it in one of our meals, but you're not actually required, of course, to eat it. So, but you do get the opportunity to try it if you want. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other foods, but first, Abel's going to talk to us a little bit about corn and potatoes and how important they are in Peru and the Andes especially.
Yes. Well, I would like to see each one of your faces. That makes the experience different. But in this case, I always like to make this question to my visitors. How many varieties of potatoes do you think there are in Peru? And the answer is more than 4,000. So we have potatoes very close to sea level, and we have local farmers growing potatoes over 13 or 14,000 feet. It's unbelievable. So as a part of the experience, we try to show many different sizes, colors, fragrances, and even tastes. So potato is the main ingredient in Peru, but of course we have some influence from the Asia gastronomy as well. That's why we use a lot of rice. As you know, corn also, the first plant, the proto corn, has been founded not in Peru, has been founded in Mexico. But even like that, it seems that by any reason, somebody brought the corn to this part of the continent, and we have more than 3,000 varieties of corn as well. So it's not just the potato or corn. We have quinoa, we have algae, we have cereals. So if any of you are vegetarians, for example, it's not hard at all to be vegetarian in Peru because we have a bunch of options. You don't need you don't need any meat. So most of the cereals, they contain a lot of protein. So that was the base of the diet of the Andean people. In Peru, in Cusco region, we have two seasons mainly. We have the wet season from December, part of December until April. And then we have the dry season from May to October, November. So in some areas, especially in the high Andes above 14,000 feet, people is growing potatoes the whole year. But in some other places where there's no so much water, they depend on the season. So they just grow potatoes in the wet season. So yeah, in terms of gastronomy, Peru is another delicious experience. And you have to try it, because even if you don't feel so confident to try something new, we always recommend to to go for it because it's unique. Same thing with this, the drink, in the picture on the right side is the purple chicha morada, is how do we call it in Spanish. It's a drink, it's not fermented, it's sweet, and it's purple corn with cinnamon, with pineapple peel and lime juice. It's really good because the antioxidants. So it's another another traditional drink we have in Peru. Next slide, please. What else do we have? Oh yeah, it's delicious for sure.
So, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So a lot of the foods too, we'll also see, like if you're on the coastal region, the picture here on the left, you can see ceviche, so like Peruvian style ceviche, or maybe like when you're in the mountains, the picture on the right, this is like a mountain trout. So a lot of just farm to table, super fresh made food. So our B&Bs, like they source everything from just like the local area. And then if you decide, for example, to go to Lima, like I had mentioned before, there's some really renowned restaurants and really great cafes on the left. This is probably the prettiest avocado toast I've ever had in my life. And on the right, this is what Peruvian fusion, and you also have what's called chifa, which is a Chinese Peruvian fusion. And in the early 1900s, a lot of Asians came over from China to work, and there became a fusion of food, and so it's very common to find, and it's super delicious. We actually take you out to a restaurant so that you can experience the Asian Peruvian fusion for yourself. It's very easy to do in Peru the most. I had noticed, Pierre, you said you liked meats, and you'll get plenty of that as well, so I can kind of cater to all different ends in Cusco. It ends on a Saturday. We run the trip from a Saturday to a Saturday, and then you fly out on Sunday. Some people like to stay a little bit longer. We offer an add-on to Rainbow Mountain. A lot of people ask about this. It's a really beautiful destination. It's outside of Cusco, so it's easier to go from Cusco. We leave very early in the morning, like 3 a.m. And the reason is because we want to get there super early for the sunrise. It's an absolutely incredible sunrise. You also get there before other people. You hit 17,000 feet, so it is quite high. The hike itself is actually not that long, but the elevation can make it a little harder. The advantage, though, of doing it at the end of the itinerary is by that time you've acclimated. So you've been at 11,000 feet for essentially about a week at that point. So if you were to add on Rainbow Mountain, instead of leaving on Sunday with us, you would leave on Monday. So a lot of people like to do that. It's really pretty. And we get a lot of just questions about tips. So we tend to do like a lot of shoulder season stuff. So before it gets too super busy, so we do like spring and fall trips. So like May or September, October. You'll want for clothing, and we have tips that I'll email to you, also some like lists, but layers are your friends. So depending on if you hike, I mean, the nights can get in the 30s or 40s Fahrenheit. So, you know, can dip to freezing about. And like the days can actually be really warm, like 60s, 70s. And because of the elevation, like you've got some sun, like you can definitely get a good tan or sunburn. So when you're in, you know, the cities like anywhere else, street smarts, Peru is actually rated travel.state.gov at a level 1, which is just exercise normal precautions. It's a very safe place to travel. So just, of course, the typical, like keeping your values close, you know, you can put a strap on your camera, don't leave your purse or your suitcase, you know, unattended, or if you're on a train. Traveling in Peru, especially in the smaller towns and in Cusco and Ollantaytambo, it's really helpful to have cash. So there's the sol, and it's the US dollar is actually used in some larger purchases. They pretty much use like a 3-to-1 conversion. So if you're buying something, bills or something, but that would be a pretty big purchase. So if you're buying food or, you know, little things at the grocery, it's much better to have cash and coins. And of course, you'll want that for tips as well, like for quarters. And then, of course, with immunizations, be sure to visit your travel clinic before you leave. One of the things you'll really want to pay attention to is yellow fever, because many countries won't allow you to enter if you've been in a country that has an endemic yellow fever. And so you'll need to show your travel card. It's a little yellow immunization card. And sometimes yellow fever immunizations are limited. So that's something like with your travel clinic, you'll want to talk to your doctor about and make sure that you have that ahead of time in case that it's limited in your area. People ask about malaria. It's not in like the Cusco area. The elevation is way too high. There are other regions because there's the Amazon in Peru that malaria is around, but not where we're traveling. And for that matter, there really aren't like a ton of bugs. I mean, sometimes on the Inca Trail, there might be some mosquitoes, but just generally it's not like tons and tons, you know, of insect repellents or anything like that needed because of the elevation. Also, the other thing is altitude sickness, which we'll talk a little bit about, but there's medical prescription for that, which again, you can talk to your travel clinic doctor about, you know, for your needs for that, but most people do that. And then the other thing that we talk about traveling in Peru is ethical travel. There are kind of two main things. So often you'll see kids on the street either begging or selling things. And we really try to educate clients about, you know, as heartbreaking as it might feel, like not giving money, because it's actually like de-incentivizing education and often is perpetuating like what's actually could be a bad or dangerous situation for the children. And so if you do want to support an organization that actually provides structural change, we can point you to that. And another piece of the ethical travel is photo etiquette. You'll often see like ladies with llamas and beautiful clothing, and they will expect money. And it's, you know, if you want to take a picture of them, that's fine, but just know that you should give coins for that. And in general, anytime you're taking a picture, especially of someone that's indigenous, don't just snap the photo, be sure to ask, and even better, like develop a rapport. Like if you buy something from someone and then want to take a picture with them or have like a little conversation, you know, that's much better because it's really about the people to people experience again. And then moving on. So with altitude, the biggest tips that we can give are time to acclimate. So like I said, we arrive on a Saturday on our itinerary, which gives you several full days, especially those that are hiking, to be able to acclimate before doing the trail. So just taking it slow when you get there, limiting alcohol because it's really about hydration, and then caffeine for that matter too. So making sure you're getting your fluids and hydrating. There's a local remedy called agua florida that's amazing. It smells really good. It's this herbal water that you can just like splash on your hands and inhale, and it's really incredible. And then of course there's mate de coca, which comes from the coca leaf, which you see in this picture, and it's everywhere. It's at our B&B. You can have it all day long. Abel is going to tell us a little bit about the significance of the coca leaf in Andean culture a little bit, because sometimes it gets misperceived.
Sure. Well, the coca leaf is a very powerful leaf and is very related with some ceremonies and tradition. Here in the Andes, the coca is not a drug, just to be clear, okay? The cocaine is just one of the 14 alkaloids you can find on this leaf, but it contains proteins, vitamins, etc. So it's used for many different ways. And a lot of people recommend coca tea when you are in high places like Cusco because it's really good for altitude sickness. But what do we have behind? I mean, why it's so good for altitude sickness? And one of the components of this leaf is the globulin. So the globulin, it's a protein, and that helps to your body to produce more red blood cells. And if you have more red blood cells, it means more oxygen to your brain. And if you have more oxygen, less headache. So that's why the coca leaf stimulates to your body to get more and more red blood cells. Here in the Andes, all the people who live at this altitude, above 11,000 feet, our blood is thicker than most of you who live, I don't know, in above sea level, because we have more red blood cells. So that makes a big difference. So in the natural way, you can produce more, but it takes longer. And if you take coca leaves or coca tea, it makes the process a little bit faster. So that's why it's a really good help to some of the symptoms of the altitude sickness.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And as you think about your Peru plans too, it's not just Cusco and the Sacred Valley, but there are other highlights. A lot of people like to go to Lima, which is really your center for culture. Like this picture is from an amazing museum. And then there's also, you can visit the Nazca lines and go on several other hikes. Abel, do you want to just talk a little bit about some of these different options in Peru?
Yes, one of the things about all these places, they are located in different areas of the country. Lima and Nazca lines both are closer to the coast, okay? The Amazon is in the other side of the country, so it takes longer to get there. In some places, you can get there by car. For example, from Cusco, you can get to Puerto Maldonado, which is the closest city in the Amazon. It takes like 8 hours by car. But in some other places, the only one way to get there is by plane. So we have the Titicaca Lake as well, which is in southern Peru, and is the highest lake in the world and the largest one as well. So in all these places, we have different features, weather, landscapes, colors, traditions, people, languages, etc. Well, all of them speak Quechua, but there are also another local languages and some other costumes related with their own context. So in Titicaca Lake, we have the floating islands, so people can navigate the lake and stay with some local families in the island. You can spend one night and try to learn a little bit how they live, which is fantastic. It's completely different. In the Amazon, there are nations, okay? Small groups of people. Some of them are uncontact communities. They don't want to have any kind of contact with the civilization, with the actual civilizations. So you will see a lot of animals, flowers, butterflies, orchids, etc. So it's one of the reasons why Peru is so rich in terms of biodiversity. And then we have other hikes close to the highest peak in Peru, which is the Huascarán. So it doesn't matter if you want to spend some time in the coast, in the high Andes, or in the Amazon. These three places are very different and very unique. So it's really worth it if you want to go to one of these places, because the experience is amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abel. So I've seen quite a few questions come through, and we had some when people signed up. So I'm going to answer a few, and then if you have additional questions, feel free and type them into the chat, and we'll kind of catch them going on. So one of the questions that came up was solo versus group travel. We have a really great blog that kind of talks about that I'll include when I email everyone back. But you can certainly do solo travel in Peru. Now, I'll say that if you decide to do the Inca Trail hike, no matter what, you'll go in a group. So like with us, it's a longer trip, but if you just do the 4-day Inca Trail hike, like you wouldn't be on your own, you would join an operator doing the hike itself. So in that sense, you'd still be in a group anyway. You know, of course, advantages of solo traveling is that you can set your own schedule. You know, you really aren't tied to what other people are doing. Though with group travel, you know, like for us, we take a lot of the work out of it for you. We really vet all of the partners that we work with. You know, we put a lot of energy into making a really smooth experience for you so that you don't have to stress so much, because I know everyone's got their busy lives. Marco, thanks for joining us. No problem on your other events. So yeah, so those are some of the differences between solo and group travel. Another person asked about safety in Lima. I mean, like many cities, you know, Lima has its kind of areas. It's really easy to take, I think it's Uber that operates in Lima. So like getting around, maybe not quite advisable to walk from neighborhood to neighborhood in all of Lima. So it's really easy to take transportation. Like I spent a couple days in Lima just totally by myself. And there's some areas that walking is fine. And then other areas where I opted to take an Uber because it just felt safer as a solo female traveler. And then again, applying those, you know, street smarts, like being aware of what neighborhood you are in, what time of day it is, how many people are around, watching this stuff on you, you know, taking care of your valuables. Susan, you ask about Uber versus taxi. I like Uber because of the convenience of ordering it on my phone, seeing who's picking me up, having that kind of tracking. I've actually like had the terrible experience of leaving something in an Uber before, totally freaking me out. And then, you know, being able to contact the driver and get it back. So there are a lot of, I feel like, advantages for me with Uber, and it's so easy. Abel, have you taken taxis in Lima?
Yes, several times. You know, in Lima is the capital and the largest city in Peru in terms of population. So some neighborhoods, they are very, very nice. I mean, when you walk through, it seems like you are in another country. But then when you go to out of these places, you can see like huge contrast in terms of poverty and work, and most of the tourist areas are located in good neighborhoods. So when you walk around, there's no problem. But then if you want to go by yourself to some other neighborhoods, you will see more people, it's less safety. And yeah, we usually recommend do not take so many things with you in hands because could be a risk, you know, like cell phones, cameras, watches, things like that. But on general, if you're walking in Miraflores or San Isidro, places like that, it's very, very safe. A lot of police officers. So yeah, there's no problem.
Yeah. And another question that came out is about cash versus credit cards. That's also going to depend. I mean, if you're in Ollantaytambo or in Cusco, it's generally good to have cash for like buying mementos or things from the markets. Like you're definitely going to need cash for that. If you're going to a nicer restaurant and, you know, spending a little bit more money, it's likely that they'll, you know, take like a Visa, and you usually can see it on the window if, you know, if they take credit cards or not. And then in Lima, if you go to like museums or nice restaurants or cultural things there, you'll certainly be able to use credit cards. Another person asked about, because I mentioned we do our trips in May and like September, October, but she mentioned that her breaks as a teacher are in March and in the summer. You certainly, those are two good times to travel there too. It kind of just depends on what you're looking for as well, as far as hiking the Inca Trail or visiting the Sacred Valley. We also do custom trips. So if you have a private group, that's something that we can put together for you. So, and then another person asked about train travel in Peru. It's not like Europe. You can't do like, you know, bouncing around from place to place, but there is a luxury train that goes from Cusco to Puna, which is on the border of Bolivia. And Abel and I were talking about it earlier today. It's a really beautiful experience. It is very expensive though. So if you're looking for kind of a luxury train experience with a view, that could be worth it. But as far as like using it as a mode of transportation, it's not the most economical. Any other questions? I think maybe we got most of the questions in. November to March travel question from Susan. That tends to be the rainy season. Abel, do you want to talk a little bit about that? The trail is closed for a little bit too.
Yeah, from November to March, the weather is more unpredictable. There's more chances to get like heavy rain sometimes, but you can, the other good thing is less people. So the high season in Peru is from May to October normally, because it is dry season, good weather, good pictures, sunny days. But from November to March, rainy season, less people, and not good weather the whole time. So that could be a con. But yeah, in general, in the other side is like beautiful landscapes because everything looks green. You have a lot of fields with plants growing, and that make the panorama, the landscape way much different. So yeah, you can decide. It's not too bad. I mean, sometimes rain is just rain. I mean, it looks different, but even like that, when you go to Machu Picchu and it's rainy, it's just mystical. It's different, and even like that, it's beautiful. So we always recommend, yeah, whatever is better to you. If it's dry season or wet season, now we have more visitors during the whole year. But yeah, wet season is a good option.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Abel. A couple other questions on like timing wise. So we talked about a little bit earlier as far as COVID goes, you know, Peru's on lockdown until the end of June. And so it's unclear when it will open up. Like many other countries, generally they're opening up domestic travel first. So first the domestic flights within Peru will resume, and then slowly things will open up internationally. So, you know, we really don't know. It could be like late summer, it could be early fall. We are keeping a close eye on that. And of course, about as far as our trips, Lawrence, you're asking about September, October 2021. Yeah, so we've gone ahead and just only decided to do 2021 trips in May and September, assuming that, you know, all things COVID are much better by then as well. And Susan, you asked about a shaman. That's not something that we offer. It is possible in Peru. There is some discussion about like responsible travel and ethics around it. That's probably good for, that could be its whole other discussion. I would just say it's worth doing research to make sure that if you do see a shaman, you're respecting the culture and it's a real experience. I don't know, Abel, if you want to add a little bit more to that.
Yes. Now it's like a business, you know, maybe you hear about some psychotropic plants like ayahuasca or San Pedro and some ceremonies related with these rituals. You have to research very well about this, because some people, they just want to have fun. They think that these plants are drugs and they can have like an experience taking these plants, but it's not. If you really want to do this, you have to be conscious about who's gonna lead you in the process. Always could be dangerous. Some people die because of this. And shamans, in terms of like healers, well, there's a lot of people also. But if you have, if you want to do something like that, you need to research very well. And I don't like to recommend someone in special because it's hard to find honest shamans, because a lot of people understood that it's a good way to make money. So they just start talking different things, but not something real related with the Andean spirituality.
Perfect, thank you. I think that we've covered most of the questions. Is there anything else? Let's see. Lawrence was asking about group travel. Yeah, thank you to anybody that has to leave. No problem. We understand we're about to wrap up. Yeah, so our trips are like 8 to 12 people. And so they're all small group. We do the departures together, and then we also do custom dates for any of that. And yes, anyone that's asking about like costs and the trip details, I'll send that in an email, and I'll also send a video. It takes us a couple hours to get it uploaded, but I'll send that to everyone else. I think that we answered all the questions. We have a couple people on the call that are joining us next year, which we're super excited about. So I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I'll send a follow-up, and thanks so much for joining us.